if the Super Bowl were to be played today, this is the list of who we think is most likely to win it. And we're going to break down the top 5. But before we get into the top 5, let me just talk about 6 through 10 a little bit, because there's a couple of teams who have slipped out of the top 5, as we discussed last week. The San Francisco 49ers have tumbled all the way down to 8 after back-to-back losses, and the Houston Texans have now fallen all the way to 6th.
All the way to 6th.
How are you feeling about those? So I thought the Houston Texans should be 1 last week. So one...
Right. I'm glad I did not say the Houston Texans were the best team in the NFL last week. It was bound to happen at some point, right? Nobody's going to be the Miami Dolphins and win every game. The Houston Texans, it was too good to be true in a lot of ways. C.J. Stroud humanly could not throw an interception. D'Amico Ryans was the greatest coach of all time. The Texans had all these offensive weapons. Oh, welcome to Minnesota. Sam Darnold was better. D'Amico Ryans was out-coached. The Texans' offense didn't look that great. And Brian Flores with Minnesota looks like he deserves to be an NFL coach again. Absolutely brilliant defense. So the Houston Texans, still a top 10 team. Number 6 feels pretty good right now. They will bounce back. They play in the AFC South. They're going to win that division. But this feels more right for the Houston Texans. They are not the best team in the NFL yet. Number 6.
The 49ers not only tumble out of the top 5, but they fall all the way to 8 behind the Philadelphia
Because they
Eagles.
lost to the Rams.
They did lose to the Rams, and it was a bad loss. Embarrassing, some would say, maybe on a channel, maybe on a video on this very YouTube channel was described as such by a certain person sat at this desk. But I just can't have them below the Philadelphia Eagles because the Eagles played one good defensive performance against a team who we thought were bad coming into the year.
Who's winning right now? Because this is the whole idea. Is right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is why it's
field.
Fun. This is why it's fun. This is why we do
the
the debate for talkSPORT.com and on talkSPORT Endzone. Who's winning right now if the Eagles and 49ers play? Based off the current state of the teams.
I think the 49ers win that game of football.
I would take the Eagles.
I think the 49ers win that game of football.
This is where it's fun.
Because the coaching is so much better. Because Nick Sirianni, I don't think is
kind of a problem
coach.
for the Eagles, yeah.
And yes, the Eagles have Jalen Carter, who was sensational this week and had a defense who did really show up in a massive way. And you have to give them a lot of love for that. That game, by the way, in New Orleans, for a game that was 3-0 going into the fourth quarter, was a hell of a lot of fun.
That was a great. Sometimes those are my favorite NFL games. Yeah. The games where nobody's scoring more than 20, but it comes down to the end. Good defenses, good quarterback play, good running games. That was for week 3. That was a really nice NFL game.
But I thought Jalen Hurts was bad, and I think he throws an interception every game now. That's why I take the 49ers. But let's get into the top 5. Sitting in at 5, the Baltimore Ravens, who did not have a good start to the season, but you believe in them enough off the back of a win against the Dallas Cowboys. No, I'm talking myself out of it already.
I believe in the Ravens enough, Will, because the Ravens have Lamar Jackson, and they are AFC Championship continuers every year. I don't think they're winning the Super Bowl this year, but they are a top 5 team in the NFL, and we were reminded of that in Dallas. Fourth quarter was a mess, garbage time. Lamar Jackson looked great. The Ravens were playing with fire. You're on the road in Dallas. Dallas has to win that game. Dallas couldn't even come close when it mattered. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson last week, that's what they're supposed to look like. Yeah, they're a top 5 team.
Derrick Henry runs the ball for...
And he looks really good.
Over 150, gets... scores as well. Like, he looks really good. Jerry Jones comes out after the game and says the Cowboys couldn't afford him, which, by the way, is utter nonsense.
That's an absolute lie. They're worth $10 billion, and we're not even talking salary cap. The Dallas Cowboys had the cap money to sign Derrick Henry. I think he's making $5 million this year. Jerry Jones has gotten pretty good about lying about money.
Yeah, he's absolutely lying about that. But Baltimore, I need a bit more convincing. I still would have had Houston sneaking into the top 5 above them. But that defense looked excellent against the Cowboys this week. Madubuike, fantastic up front. Kyle Van Noy rolling back the years to his Lions days, looked brilliant. So I will back the Ravens. I do think they fall to 1-3 against the Bills this weekend.
And then they're do they even stay in the top 10? We have all these 3-0 teams. This is the fun of it. It's a week-to-week league. We've been reminded of that thus far in the NFL.
But I think what's fascinating to me is that that's debatable. Ravens, do they make the top 5? Should there be somebody else in there? This top 4, I think, if you put this top 4 in any order, maybe other than putting the Lions at 1, I think any order for this top 4, you can find a way to justify it. That being said, I would have the Minnesota Vikings higher than 4.
Yeah, and see, that's where I always look at this from a full season perspective. Yes, we were talking about the moment, but I also have to think about, are you really winning the Super Bowl? I have a hard time, no offense to Minnesota or Vikings fans or I have a hard time believing the Minnesota Vikings are going to win the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold. I would love to come back in February and we're able to play back that clip. That would be incredible. I just don't think it's going to happen. And yeah, I'm taking. There's a few better teams in the NFL right now than the Minnesota Vikings, but the fact that we're even talking about them and they're 3-0 with Sam Darnold and they look this dominant is a total tribute to the Minnesota Vikings.
Hey, look, we ran out of time on the rundown this week. We ran out of time to get to Sam Darnold, but outside of the fact that he's playing like an all-pro quarterback, what a wonderful thing for that young man to have been in the New York market, to have been told that he was just not good enough, to have been told that he saw ghosts in the pocket, that he mentally couldn't handle the game. He goes and has a year in San Francisco as a backup, resets himself. I spoke to him in Vegas this year, and I was really impressed with what I saw from him in that interview. He was poised. He really spoke. He said everything you wanted to hear about a year, which was quite humbling for him, but where he learned how to play the position again. And he's gone to Minnesota, and he's looked unbelievable. The defense, Brian Flores, so motivable, so exciting, so good up front. I think I might even have the Vikings at 2, if not 1, based on where they are right now.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I know, right? Wild. I think I'd have them 2, but we'll get to it. The highest team you've got rated in the NFC, though, is the Lions in 3.
Yeah, and I'm not super confident right now about the Lions and having them number 3. This is also common sense. I mean, the Lions are a good team. They could have been in the Super Bowl last year. They're winning games, but they're barely winning games. All 3 games that they played this year, nothing has been beautiful about it. It's coming down to the end. It's a little messy. But I also think they'll find their way. I think you see this a lot with teams where I hate the term hangover in sports, but there is a little bit of a hangover. It's why you play 17 games. They're still 2-1. They're a very, very good team, but they need to be a bit better right now, or the Minnesota Vikings will pass them.
I think what this list proves, and we're going to go into this with the top 2, is that your approach to this is very much what's the legacy, what's the pedigree, what's the quality of the team.
I am sort of a journalist,
and you can buy into the idea that they're going to get good. I am clearly an absolute what have you done late for me merch. What have you done for me lately merchant. I am a guy who goes, what have you done for me lately? What have you looked like this week? Did I enjoy watching a game? Was it fun?
Who did you pick to win the AFC South this year?
So, yeah, let's not talk about that. So for my feelings, like, you've got Buffalo at 2 and Kansas City at 1.
Yeah.
You've got Minnesota at 4 and Detroit at 3. And with both of those, the argument for having the Lions as the best team in the NFC and the Chiefs the best team in the AFC is that they're winning games ugly, and that's impressive, and they've got really good teams and really good coaches, and so we think they'll figure it out. I'm like, these teams are really fun, scoring loads of points and look great on defense. Give me that. I want fun.
Yeah. This is for the website. You do radio. There's a little bit of a difference, and that's what makes talkSPORT so amazing.
My top 5 would go Bills, Vikings, Chiefs, Lions, I think.
Yeah.
So that would be my top 4. But why are the Bills not number 1 for you?
The Bills have to prove it, and then their schedule, they will prove it with their schedule. When you're playing, they're going to beat the Jaguars. But when you're playing the Ravens in Baltimore, when you're playing the Texans in Houston, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, good team, really good defense, I still, in the end, and I also go off history when I make this list, right? So it is in the moment and it is a prediction for the season, but look what Kansas City did last year. The Bills have always been falling short to Kansas City. Kansas City is still winless. Kansas City still has Patrick Mahomes. But Buffalo is close. The fact that Buffalo keeps winning these games, and as you've been pointing out, Will, dominating their opponents. Josh Allen looks like an MVP. I felt like when the season started, people were not talking about Buffalo very much at all, and we're 3 weeks in, and Buffalo looks like one of the best teams in the NFL, but not the best team.
I'm going to make a prediction. By this time next week, the Bills will be number 1 on the list, and the Jets will creep into the top 10. I think the Jets will replace the Steelers in the top 10, or maybe the Saints or one of those other teams. Those are my 2 picks for next week. My picks have been horrible this season. They may well be horrible again. Brian might make them horrible because he writes the list. So he might just decide that I'm just going to absolutely make Will look like an idiot and refuse to do it, even though I know it's right, really. Brian, always good fun. Check out that list at talksport.com. Check out all the great content we've got here at talkSPORT Endzone. Brilliant player interviews, lists like this every week. Latest breaking news. You'll find it all across the channel, so make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments why the Chiefs shouldn't be number 1.